Has something ever happened to you in your life that has you questioned everything in it, leaving you thinking, what else do you want to do in your life? Well, that's exactly what happened to Ingrid Michaelson a few years ago, and it sparked an interesting story of hard work and reaching your dreams. My name is Joel Casillas from Behind the Anchor, and I'll tell you the story of how The Notebook was made. When someone talks about the musical career of singer-songwriter Ingrid Michaelson, they might say quirky, weepy, romantic, but she knew she could do much more. After losing both her parents, she was tired of the music life and touring, selling almost all her masters. And she was thinking about what she wanted to do with her life. Always being a theater kid and loving everything about acting, but having to change to music early in life, she thought, why not Broadway? So in 2016, she texted Sarah Bareilles saying, I want to do Broadway. Sarah had been working on the beloved musical Waitress, so she was not strange to the musical world, and she encouraged Ingrid to follow her dream. In 2017, she started seeing Will Chase. And after Ingrid Michaelson let him know about her dream of pursuing Broadway, Chase turned to producer Kevin McCollum to let him know Ingrid's interested. They just needed to figure out what the story was gonna be about. In a meeting between Ingrid and Kevin, she mentioned the loved movie and bestseller book The Notebook. Then McCollum suggested that she start writing a few songs to see the potential. They knew that since this is a blockbuster name, they would need to have a clear idea. But McCollum isn't strange to work with young composers, with examples like Jonathan Larson on Rent and Lin-Manuel Miranda with In the Heights, so he had confidence in Ingrid. But she would still need to prove that this was the gig for her. Kevin was thinking it would take months for Ingrid to come up with song ideas, but was surprised when 2 hours later, after the meeting, she would send the first song, I Know, which made it into the actual show. After that moment, she began sending song after song to McCollum until eventually he hired her for the gig. Now, it was time to assemble the team. Becca Brown's Theater was asked to write the story. Becca, like Ingrid, was in her first musical on Broadway, but had already worked on big projects like the TV show This Is Us and the play The Oregon Trail. They also partnered with Michael Greif and Schele Williams.
Hi, I'm editing the video right now and I realized I said the names really bad, so just to clarify, it's Michael Greif and Schele Williams. Let's continue with the video.
When the team started working on the musical, both Becca and Ingrid realized that they were more personal to the story than they thought. Becca lived firsthand with someone with Alzheimer's, while Ingrid could talk about loss and grief. Before moving forward to the actual show, I want to talk about what the story is about. The Notebook is the first book and bestseller written by Nicholas Sparks, and it tells the story of the enduring love between Noah Cullen and Allie Hamilton. Separated by class and circumstance in 1940s, they reunite years later to rekindle their romance. This story is framed by an elderly man reading their lifelong love story with a notebook to a woman with Alzheimer's in a nursing home. Nicholas has spoken about how this story was written. He explained that he had people in his life who had Alzheimer's, so he was able to experience the loss and the process and put it into words. The book has sold over 14 million copies, and both the book and movie starring Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams continue to endure after years of their release. But time to go back to Ingrid and Becca. They've spoken on interviews about how being able to pull this story apart allowed them to use this as a healing process for their grief, especially on Ingrid's end. After the musical was created, she explained that after her mother's death, she never cried about her until the show was made. Now she was crying every performance, since she put her thoughts she had into the show, making this a reliving of that painful memory. And of course, when making the story, a few changes were made. One of which was to make each character independent from each other, since the movie alludes to the fact that Noah needs Allie to move forward, but in the musical, they can live on their own. But they are deciding to be together since that's what they want, but doesn't necessarily need to. The other main change was to make 3 Noahs and 3 Alice to be able to tell each chapter of their story. But since they require now 6 people on stage, they decided to make the cast interracial. They knew people might find it confusing, but they stated that this decision was made since it didn't matter if they were black or white. This was a story that can resonate with anyone. Now, the reality is that this casting decision has been a controversy ever since the musical was created. People find that it's not easy to follow a straight timeline while having people from different races to be supposed to be the same person. Also, Ingrid knew years before the musical was created that people would be mad, since this is not a straight adaptation of the movie. There is no Ryan Gosling or Rachel McAdams lookalike, and there are changes to some story plotlines, such as the year this takes place. Instead of being in the 1940s, it was moved to the 70s to make sense with the interracial relationships portrayed in the musical. The show officially premiered in 2022 in Cincinnati at the Chicago Shakespeare Theater with mixed reviews and skepticism. Some observers stated that Ingrid's music was bland and that the story felt distant from the movie and the book, but the overall opinion was still a good one. A night out show with some good moments, such as the rain scene. Yes, they made rain appear on stage, and that's something to look out if you go to this musical. The overall agreement allowed that 2 years after the Cincinnati run on February 10th, 2024, to make a transfer to Broadway, and it would take part at the Gerald Schoenfeld Theater, owned by the Showbiz organization. Yes, the same ones behind the Winter Garden, and we know what happened with Beetlejuice. After 35 previews and 317 performances, the musical would officially announce its closing on Broadway on December 15th, 2024. This surprised everyone, since the show was not even 1 year into Broadway and on a weird date, since not many shows wants to open during the December season, but this show would not announce its closing without mentioning that it would go on tour, with a stop in San Diego set for April 2026, and of course I'll be there, and I'm gonna make sure to bring you along with all the experience of seeing this musical live. The tour is set to continue with the creative team behind the original team of the Broadway production, and no major changes to the overall productions are planned. Even though the story of the musical on Broadway was cut short, there is a lot of learning to be learned by Ingrid and Becca. In a world where we're getting a lot of changes in how musicals are made, far from the classic Rodgers and Hammerstein formula, it's still refreshing to hear a new type of show. And I have to be honest, while doing this research, I started listening to the cast album, and I fell in love with it. It sounds more like an album than a musical, and that, for me, it's a good thing. And I'm not alone. The 11 o'clock song My Days has become one of the go-to songs for online theater fans. And I can't wait for what Ingrid Michaelson is up next, and hopefully she can get her redemption with another shot on a musical on Broadway. In the meantime, let's enjoy the tour, get your tissues ready, and I'll see you behind the anchor. And if you reached this part of the video, I want to thank you so much for all the support. I want to thank you for looking at this video, and also to mention that if you haven't followed me on my social media, to ask you to please follow me on social media. I upload different type of content that you can see here on YouTube, so that's a really good place to also ask me questions. Usually when I tour is on San Diego, I am very active on stories, messages, to make sure that I let you know everything about each musical that comes here to San Diego. But yeah, definitely this is a really good one, and I'm so excited to hear what's gonna happen next, and now I'll see you behind the anchor.